Good evening. Welcome, everyone, to the headquarters of the Northeast Ohio Lebronia Group here at LeBron Dealer Plaza in beautiful LeBron land. The weather is mostly LeBron-y outside right now, with a 100% chance of LeBron, as the Cleveland Cavaliers tip off the 2014-15 season tonight at the L. What's the big story of this season? Who will emerge as the best player? Well, clearly it's Lou Amundsen, right? Is that the guy's name, Amundsen? Very good. But why listen to me? I know nothing about basketball. Luckily, we've got the experts with us to converse and to answer your questions about the upcoming season. And I'm going to introduce them in a moment, but first, let me just say how happy we are that you could be with us here. Appreciate you guys being here to kick off the season, to tip off the season. Many of you are Media Insider Rewards members, and if you're not a member and are a full subscriber to the Plain Dealer, you can see Erin in the back after the program, or if it bores you, you can see her at any point during the program and find out all about the benefits of becoming a member. I think one of the perks that you get for being a Media Insider Rewards member is that Dennis Maniloff will come to your home each morning over the winter to personally update you on Indians minor league off-season player development news. So you might consider that. Now, what the heck am I doing here? I'm not a sports writer. Well, I've got a deep interest in basketball, having played and coached it. You've heard of the round mound of rebound? Have you heard that? I was the round mound of sit down. Why the 7th grade CYO coach at St. James never put me in, I'll never know. I used to play at Cadell Recreation Center with Bud Shaw right there. True story. How long ago was that, Bud?
At least 30 years.
About 30 years ago. And I was known for repeatedly fouling Michael Regai just on the top of his head to see if it was a rug. It was not. And that's the true story. My illustrious coaching career, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade CYO girls, consisted of me trying to install a triangle in 2, only to have it turn into a parabola and 2 girls needing to go to the bathroom. So naturally, I was asked to moderate this esteemed panel. And let me tell you who's with us. A couple of people that know something about basketball. We start with Terry Pluto. He's the author of 23,000 Cleveland sports books. He just finished another one, 23,001. Did you just, while I was talking?
In the lobby.
He's been covering the Cavs with the PD and the Beacon Journal for decades. One of his many books, Loose Balls, The Short Wild Life of the American Basketball Association, was ranked 13th among Sports Illustrated's 100 best sports books of all time. He also invented the two-handed set shot.
Yes, I did.
Very nice to have you with us. Chris Fedor, this is not in any particular order, but you'll see their name tags in front of them. Chris Fedor covers the Cavs for the Northeast Ohio Media Group. He's also a sports producer for the organization. His years as a host on WKNR and now 92.3 The Fan prove that he can talk in detail about sports even amid the masses of shockingly biased homers, which makes him perfect for this particular panel.
Yeah.
Chris knows tonight is not the biggest sporting event in the Cleveland area this weekend. It's the Eds Ignatius football game Saturday. And I'm happy to say, as a fellow Eagle, and there are a couple in the audience, that he's on the right side of history on this one. There's also a Wildcat in the audience. Sorry about that. Bud Shaw, what more is there to say? You read his Shaw spin column regularly online in the PD, and the people who insult his writing in the You Said It submissions, unlike the commenters under many of my online columns, appear to have a sense of humor. Bud, as I mentioned, played basketball with me years ago. No one could camp out in the paint for 3, 4, 10, 15 seconds like he could. He was moving, yes, but not out of the paint. He had the Cavs winning the NBA title last year in his predictions, but he did. But Andrew Bynum didn't turn out to be the force he predicted he'd be. Finally, the new guys. Joe Vard recently joined the Northeast Ohio Media Group from the Columbus Dispatch, specifically to cover the LeBron-James beat. It's a beat now. We haven't had one guy be the focus of so much media attention in this town since the FBI raided Jimmy DeMora's tiki hut. Joe was a politics writer at the Columbus Dispatch, and just before he came north, he broke the story, and he did, that Ed Fitzgerald failed to have a valid driver's license for a decade. I'm sure he's already checked on LeBron's driving credentials. We'd have heard if they weren't all set.
He is a registered Democrat.
There you go, all right.
Huh.
There's some insight already, ladies and gentlemen. This is already paying off. And finally, Chris Haynes is with us. He's the new Cavs beat writer, having been signed by the Northeast Ohio Media Group off the roster of Comcast Sportsnet Northwest in Portland, where he covered the Trailblazers. He also covered the NBA for the website Slam Online. He's built a reputation as a reporter who breaks big stories. Sometime in December, I'm sure he'll be breaking the story about Dion Waiters being disgruntled over his lack of scoring chances. So welcome to you, Chris. Very nice to have you. So that's our panel today. What we're going to do is I'll ask a few questions. We'll converse a little bit. It's not a one person then the next person. We're just going to kind of jump in, and I'm going to ask you guys for questions. So if you have them, think about how you might want to state that. These are the experts. This is your chance to find out what's going on this season. So that's it. 5 players here and a little fat coach, just like high school basketball. Let's begin. Chris, will the Cavs go undefeated? Chris Haynes, will the Cavs go undefeated?
No, I think they'll. I got them winning. I think around 62 games. I think they need some time to gel. This Chris over here predicted the Cavs were going to win 70 games.
That's right.
There's only been one team to ever do that,
That's
the
right.
Chicago Bulls. So he obviously thinks this team is pretty special.
Not undefeated, though.
That's pretty close.
They'll lose a few.
70 wins is pretty close to being undefeated.
Right. They'll lose 12.
So
There you go.
70 games is like the huge threshold. So
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yes.
usually taboo to talk about. Every time somebody brings up 70, they're like, what? No. But if you look back to some of the teams that have gotten close to that number recently, the Cavs did
close
it.
to having hair.
Remember? The Cavs did it. They got 66. And think about the players on that roster. You had Mo Williams. You had what was left of Ben Wallace.
How many teams have done it in
One.
NBA history?
Yeah, one.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's a reason.
There are teams that have gotten close, though, and the Cavs are better than every team that has gotten close.
You also had LeBron playing 45 minutes. That's not going to happen this year.
Well, when you look back to the Dallas team that won 67 about 10 years ago, they started 0-4, and not a single player on that roster played in all 82 games. Not a single player.
So when they don't win 70, what do we all get?
Well, nothing. But when you do win 70, you get to be a part of history, so enjoy that.
You guys see what I've had to deal with all preseason?
So will we? What are the numbers? Well, let's get that out of the way then. If it's not going to be 70 games, where are the Cavs going? Let's get that out of the way. Where are the Cavs going to finish? How many wins? And will they win the division? Will they win the conference? Will they win the NBA title? You guys have all made your prognostications. Let's start on this end, and after 20 minutes, we'll move off of Terry and move to the next person.
When it comes to predictions, I'm short and brief and wrong. 58, get to the finals, lose to the Clippers.
I had 62 get to the finals, lose to the Spurs.
Ooh.
I got them 60 to 65 wins. Get to the
No,
finals.
number.
I can't. What's 60 to 65? What's
Isn't
wrong?
that a range?
That's almost
That's
half
5
the year.
numbers.
Come on, man. You got to pick a number.
Pick a number.
No, you're not going to.
I'll go
Nobody
with
can't do
number.
that.
I'll go with number.
I don't know, officer. I was between 65 and 70. I don't know.
They give you a little wiggle room when you drive. I'll get 62 wins. Get to the finals. Lose to the Spurs. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right,
Peter.
70 wins, get to the finals,
The second round.
The other team refuses to even come out.
get to the finals. By the way, I'll have you know that every time they lose a game this year, we will be surprised. That's how good they are. They're better than every single team in the NBA. So get to the finals, play against the Clippers, win 70 games, and win a championship.
Yes, there we go, ladies and gentlemen.
The drought ends.
Joe?
58 finals beat the Clippers. The regular season's just not that cool anymore. You know, they're going to bide their time. They want to play better towards the end when it really starts to matter. And I think that's what you'll see from them.
Imagine what Chris Fedor would be predicting if David Blatt had been anywhere near the NBA for the last 30 years.
That's right, 80-2. 80-2.
So that brings me to that very next question. There's new, we know about LeBron, and we'll get into him, and Joe can give us the information. Joe, you got this 1 hour where you're not camping out in his garbage, right?
Yes, I took a shower for this.
Excellent. What about the new coach, David Blatt? Doesn't have NBA experience, head coach, great record in Israel, but boy, a lot of people would look at that and say that might be a big gamble. I wonder what you experts think. So whoever wants to jump with that first.
First of all, David Blatt is a very personable guy. You know, he makes sure he calls you by name. Really, really great guy. Really great sense of humor. With that being said, it's going to be an adjustment period for him, I believe, because I think the fact that he has won everywhere he's coached, but at the same time, He's never coached LeBron James or Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving. Then you talk about putting those guys all on the same team and having them mesh together and try to play well. So I think it's going to take an adjustment period because he's used to being hands-on with his coaching style and dictating pretty much every single play down the court. He's not going to do that with these NBA players. So I think it's going to be adjustment. But I think overall he will get it. I mean, you are playing with some great talent. It was something that one of the players mentioned, LeBron. They asked LeBron during camp, they asked him, hey, is there a lot of pressure for him to have to coach you guys, Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving? Is that too much pressure for him? LeBron was like, no. What if he didn't have me or Kyrie and Kevin Love? So that was a good point. But my point is, by saying that, is that he has a great group of guys around him, and it's going to buy him time to when he finally reaches that point where he gets it.
I have a good story, not only about David Blatt, but Terry Pluto as well. This is I think my first full week on the job up here. And the Cavs had their annual charity golf outing at Firestone, and I showed up early because I was living with my parents in Akron before we could move up here. And Terry was already there. He had an interview planned with David Blatt for the big story that he had done on him that ran a few weeks ago. And Terry and I go way back. I've always looked up to him. But he had this exclusive interview with David and invited me to sit in with him. So that's the kind of guy that we're dealing with down there. And then the thing that I noticed right away with David Blatt that I've seen throughout the preseason is that he knows where he stands. And I think we all know how important that is in life, just to have a sense of where you are, the situation that you're in. I think it helps you to deal with it. And I also think that he has lived in places where basketball might not be the most important thing. I mean, he's lived in Israel, that's where there's in a constant state of danger at times. I mean, he coached in the in the former Soviet Union in Russia. I mean, there are things bigger than basketball there. So now he comes here, he has LeBron, he has the big three, and yeah, there's a lot of pressure, but this isn't the biggest thing he's ever done. I mean, his family is an ocean and a half away. I mean, he really has some perspective, and I think it'll serve him well.
Is he the coach of the team, and this is a cynical way to look at it, but is LeBron the coach and general manager of this team?
Well, you better have LeBron on your side, just like Phil Jackson knew he better have Kobe Bryant on his side, or Shaquille O'Neal on his side, or Michael Jordan on his side. And I remember even Chuck Daly, when he was with the Pistons back when the Cavs were trying to beat them, his two enforcers were Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer, were the two guys that he had in the locker room. And basically they would sit down and kind of figure out what they were going to do, and that's pretty much how they did it. So I think Blatt has been around long enough to know that. The other thing too is, did you know Blatt has never coached a 48-minute game until the Las Vegas Summer League?
Really?
Because in Europe you play 40 minutes, basically it's college or international ball, 2 halves. And I forgot what it is, but they're limited timeouts. So, in fact, that's part of the reason the Las Vegas Summer League, he actually coached the team, because there was a whole different type of situation. So, but look, it's basketball. This is not, trying to figure out the Middle East or something like that. And I think if he could figure it out in Russia, you could figure it out in Israel, you could figure it out in Turkey, you could figure it out probably 3 or 4 other countries where I forgot where he coached. As long as, when I interviewed Keith Dambrot for a story, in fact, it's in the special section there, and Keith went to a practice, LeBron had him in to watch David Blatt, and he came away impressed with Blatt. He said it was pretty clear that LeBlatt, basically LeBron and LeBlatt, how's that, together?
LeBlatt?
We're working.
LeBlatt.
Well, I think we all saw when LeBron was here the first time, late in the first stay here, when he would pretty much ignore Mike Brown. And Mike Brown would call a play, and LeBron would go out and huddle with players, and they would run something else. I would argue that he's more invested now in this organization and this team than he ever was in the last few years of his contract, the first time. So I would think he's going to embrace what Blatt brings, and be the Laimbeer, Isaiah player in the locker room. I think he's going to make sure that everybody follows what the coach wants.
Chris, and I was going to ask you, would he follow what the coach wants because the coach is calling good plays?
Well, I think his reputation, precedes him. I think he's a guy that has immense respect offensively around the world.
Chris?
I mean, I think I agree with everything the guy said, and I think the most important thing for David Blatt to do is win over LeBron. That's job number one. But at the same time, I think something that's going to help his transition, just look on the bench with him. Look at the coaches that were brought here for him to help him go through the growing pains. Some new coaches in the NBA, they don't want a lot of veterans around because they don't want anybody to step on their toes. He's willing to listen to all these guys. He's got Larry Drew. Larry Drew's been a head coach before. Tyronn Lue is the highest paid assistant of all time. He was the other guy that the Cavs were debating between, but they went out, they brought him on the bench. Tyronn Lue has learned from Doc Rivers, one of the best coaches in the NBA. And then you talk about Boylen. Boylen is another guy who's been an interim coach before. They've walked those sidelines, and I think having that kind of experience on the bench is going to be invaluable for a guy like Blatt.
It also says that a lot of these guys are insecure and they don't want their basically replacement sitting next to him. And he didn't bring in 3 buddies from the EuroLeague to coach. And let's face it, if this goes totally bad, and I don't think it will, if it goes totally bad, Dan Gilbert's got all kinds of people to pick from.
Yep.
And certainly David Blatt's been around long enough to know that. The story that I posted this morning, it's about the not winning 70 games, but that's not the only point. In there is I got an email from a guy who lives in Tel Aviv and was a big fan of Maccabi Tel Aviv, and about how Blatt almost got fired last year. They started slowly. And then I actually found a story from the Israeli Times when they won the title, and there it was, sure enough, David Blatt, who was nearly fired early in the season. And he said oftentimes his teams kind of start a little slowly, sort of sorting through the players. And remember, that was his 4th year there at Maccabi, so it wasn't like he just showed up. And when they won that Euro title, that was a huge upset being Real Madrid. They were not considered a favorite at all.
I thought it was an interesting point that Dan Gilbert made in one of your stories, that you pay a guy to sit at the end of the bench $1.5 million. Mm-hmm. Why not pay that to a guy who could really make an impact as the assistant coach in Tyronn Lue?
Right.
And I wonder if it gives us some insight into the way Dan Gilbert is thinking about putting this team together and
yeah,
the expense.
He'll write checks. And the other thing, Tyronn Lue was taken on the recruiting trip to get Kyrie to sign that midnight meeting they had. Tyronn apparently has a pretty good relationship with LeBron, and he played like 10 years in the league as a point guard. So in the last 5 years, he's with Doc Rivers. So it's, I mean, to Dan's, when you own a casino, you own a mortgage company, you own this, you own that, $1.4 million, it's like us saying $14. Seriously, it just is. If you think it's going to work.
I know Tyronn Lue. He killed it in NBA 2K9. That's where I know him from. So who else do we have to worry about? So everyone says the Cavs are going to be so great. So in the division or in the conference, the Bulls, the Heat, the Wizards, what do you guys look at as teams that are going to be the Cavs' nemesis this year?
Well,
Joe?
The Bulls startled me when we were in Columbus because Derrick Rose looks like the 2011 Derrick Rose. If he's going to be that quick, that explosive, and finish like that, the Bulls are going to be tough to deal with. I mean, obviously, I'd like the Cavs to win it all, so I think they will be dealt with, but I would not sell the Bulls short.
I mean, I think it's a 2-team race in the Eastern Conference. A lot of people look at the Bulls and the Cavs, and I think they're going to be battling it out for Eastern Conference supremacy. I think what's going to be interesting, if they get into a 7-game series, so much about a series is about matchups. And for the first time, David Blatt's going to have to adjust in a 7-game series. Tom Thibodeau has already done that, and he's been a coach of the year. Not to mention, in a 7-game series, you're looking for weaknesses of the other team, you're trying to exploit those, and then you're looking for your strengths, and you're trying to highlight those. The strength of Chicago is the front line. They've got Joakim Noah, they've got Mirotic, they've got Taj Gibson, and now they've got Pau Gasol. That's a tough, formidable front line. And if there's a weakness here in Cleveland, there aren't too many, you have to really dig deep to try and find one. It's the fact that the Cavs are thin on the front line. Tristan Thompson might play some center this year. He's 6'9". Anderson Varejao is injury prone. He's on the wrong side of 30. Aside from that, you've got Brendan Haywood, who didn't play last year. You've got Lou Amundsen. So the strength of Chicago is something that could give Cleveland some problems in a 7-game series.
And I expect Chicago to really give it to Cleveland. I think 6-7 games. Like I said, I ultimately think Cleveland will surpass them. But Derrick Rose, I'm not sold that he's going to be able to play. I'm not even sold he's going to be able to play 65-plus games. I really just, the way he plays, the level of aggressiveness, going to the hole, he takes a beating every single time. Every jump stop is just, you know, he puts all of his weight, plants it on his legs. So I don't think he'll be durable. But to his point, that front court Chicago, man, one thing about Kevin Love, I was in Portland the last 4 or 5 years. Kevin Love is from that area. So I've kind of gotten a scout report on Kevin Love as far as guys that when they try to approach him or how to attack Kevin Love. And they always question his physicality. If you can get into Kevin Love, being physical with him, get him rough, get him frustrated, that's when you got the upper hand up against him. Now, that's what Chicago is definitely going to try to do. Use the physicality. On Kevin Love, we got Taj Gibson, all those guys in the front court. So Derrick Rose or not, I think Chicago Bulls are a force regardless.
Bud?
I don't really have anything to add, Mike. No, I will jump ahead and get out of the Eastern Conference. The reason I didn't pick them to win it all is because we're only 5 months removed from what I thought was one of the great basketball clinics of all time and what the Spurs did to the Heat. And I know they're older, but that's the best coach in the league and 3 of the smartest players in the league. And until somebody shows me that they can stand up to that team in a 7-game series, I can't pick the Cavs.
You're smart.
Yeah. I'm with all those guys. Seriously.
Wow.
I mean, there's just not a whole lot. Washington's okay, right? In the East.
Yeah, I mean, I think Charlotte is a team that could threaten. I don't think they can beat the Cavs in a 7-game series. I don't think they can beat the Bulls in a 7-game series. But they're talented. They've got a big 3 of their own. Al Jefferson, Kemba Walker. They added Lance Stevenson. He's a knucklehead. Everybody knows that. He's blowing in LeBron's ear. But he's a talented player. They added him in free agency. They still have Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, a former top 5 pick.
Simple and plain, Chris. The East sucks.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It sucks.
No doubt.
It sucks. It's a two-team, probably 3-man race for that conference.
Joe, you're going to be covering LeBron exclusively through this season. I think probably readers would be interested to know how does that work? What exactly is it you're going to be doing, and how does that work into the coverage that the team here is doing?
Well,
So he tails him when he's leaving you.
Right,
He tails
right.
him. He stalks his life.
serial, looking for bank account records, that sort of thing.
Rooting through his garbage.
No, I mean, it is new, and it's something that I don't think would be possible, first of all, without a partner in Chris Haynes, who's just really good and really, he's really well-sourced and a really good basketball mind. And the way we've been working on it through the preseason, and this is the way it should be, is that Chris does a lot of basketball. I mean, he is the basketball beat reporter, and that includes LeBron. My job from a basketball perspective is to constantly take a step back and look at the broader picture. What is LeBron saying? What is he thinking? What has he seen on the court for the last couple weeks? What's coming ahead? And I think if you've read some of my morning pieces from these preseason games, that's what I've tried to do. I'm also here because LeBron is bigger than basketball. I mean, these commercials. This should be a time for political commercials on TV. That's your brain should be exploding from political commercials, and they're not, because you're seeing LeBron. I mean, he's huge, and he does so much more. He's a businessman. He's a philanthropist. He's trying to do something real in Akron Public Schools, and it's working, which is incredible. And you need someone on that. So, LeBron's got a very large story to tell, and it's my job to try to tell some of it as best as I can.
All right, let's open up to some questions. And before we do that, if you have one of these, they're making me do this. If you have one of these raffle tickets, we're going to create a raffle too. If you're watching on the internet, you are not eligible to win. So I'm drawing a raffle ticket, and I'm going to allow you to enjoy, is this a LeBron poster thing? A poster of the man that Joe Vard is covering 24 hours a day, LeBron James. 120036 would be the number. If you happen to have that, this is yours. Anybody? Okay, that went really well. So, if you happen to notice that number a little later, let me know. Let's go ahead and open up some questions. Okay. That's the most eager hand raiser I have ever seen.
So we don't know much about David Blatt. We know something. Are we going to see a different Princeton offense or not? This is the NBA, and they're going to run what they run. Do you think the offense will look radical by mid-season or the end of the season different than every other NBA team? LeBron standing out and getting the ball.
Barrier, Chris?
It's different now.
Is
I mean,
it?
would you guys agree? I mean, certainly not Mike Brown. Well, I mean, just to be fair, and it's not just everything's run out of pick and roll. And I think it'll continue to be. The tough thing is, now, again, you didn't have a 24-second clock, too, over there. This is a little tighter. What I want to see is, like, in the last 5 or 6 minutes of the game, is it just going to be, you know, LeBron clear-outs or not? Because coaches fall into that. But I think in terms of just when they run down the court, if you watch, they already got better spacing. You got some guys over here, some guys over there. And also, you have people who can make outside shots, and it makes it a little easier to have the spacing stuff. But in the end, you need guys when the clock's ticking down to be able to create their own shot.
Chris Haynes.
You know, and that's one thing. It's interesting with David Black. When you talk about the Princeton offense, he said he's not running the Princeton offense. He doesn't call it that. So he got his own variation of his offense. I think he uses most of the part, 80% of the Princeton offense, but he got some other things sprinkled in there. But one thing that caught me about San Antonio, what LeBron said last year, he talked about when Spurs just annihilated the Heat last year. He talked about that's the way an offense should be ran. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure on a team that has 3 superstars on a team, I'm not sure you can ever have guys like that play into a system like the Spurs, because you got so many ball-dominant players where you really can't, they're really not going to be passing the ball around like the Spurs. The Spurs got a bunch of guys that were fighting to crawl to get in the league, a bunch of D-League guys. So when Pop gets them all together, they're ready. They got just a well-oiled machine. Over here, you got too many guys. Kyrie think he could take everybody on one-on-one. LeBron knows he could take whoever wants to take one-on-one. Kevin Love has the same mentality. So to see that ball just say it's going to be swinging constantly, maybe a little bit early on just to appease Black. But over time, they're going to start doing what they do. And that's when they score the ball. So
well, one of the good things, though, I think, Chris, see what you think. At least if you start out with spacing.
Yeah.
You have spacing.
I
mean, you see these guys come down the floor, and it's like they're all waiting for a bus stop over on the right side of the corner. I mean, already it's shot. So now you're at 12 seconds. You're trying to get somebody to run over there. At least, it's kind of like the whole thing. At least, if you're going to eat right, at least look at the salad bar. Don't just go right past it to the pie,
By the way, that is exactly my philosophy. Chris Fedor, to Chris Haynes' point, there still is just one basketball on the court, right?
Yeah, no question about it. And I think these guys are going to have to make adjustments. You saw the guys when they went to Miami in 2010, they had to make adjustments. Chris Bosh was somebody who, in Toronto, was one of the most effective post players in the NBA. He was one of the most efficient post players in the NBA. But they didn't need that from him. They asked him to do other things. They felt their offense was best because Bosh was pulled away from the basket, creating driving lanes, creating space. And I think if the Cavs' offense is going to work at its best, I think what they're going to ask of a guy like Kevin Love, who's used to playing in the post, is for him to venture away from the basket, to create that kind of spacing. But the beauty of this Cavs roster and the reason why they put it together the way that they did is because they have 3 guys, 3 of the top 25 players in the game that can take over a game at any point. And there aren't too many teams that can do that.
And that's where we might start to see some disruption with the chemistry. You talk about Kevin Love playing outside of that. I don't know if you guys seen my story a couple of days ago. Kevin Love talking about he needs more touches around the basket. And so
already.
Already. Preseason. Final preseason. So I was surprised when he told me that. And so that just shows you that, hey, this is still, they're talking the right game. They're saying what they need to say, but at the end of the day, these guys want their numbers. Now, they're fine with getting their numbers as long as everything is going through them and the team is winning. But, hey, when they're, getting 12 points and 2 of 10 and 8 of those shots are 3-point shots, that's when they're like, hey, man, I didn't sign up for this. So, you start looking for things like that, looking for see.
But let me ask.
Love's not been paid yet. Kyrie got his max contract. I mean, of course, it's tough though. Well, when he only got $15 million a year, it's kind of hard to get along. But basically, they all compare themselves to, I want my max contract. Would you say that? I mean, that's this kind of, the gold star thing. And Kyrie's got the max. LeBron can have whatever contract you want. But Love is doing this waiting thing. So he made that. Frankly, that was when I read your story, Chris. That was in the back of my mind. Man hasn't been paid yet.
Yeah, he hasn't. This is his contract year right here.
Yeah.
And You know, he's still a, you know, they want to win.
I think the more these guys talk, we need to go around again. I got it at 42 and 40.
70. Still 70. If there's that much friction, though, and LeBron steps in, will they listen to him?
Yeah, they will, and he, I mean, yeah, that is one of his roles if he is comfortable in doing that. I think this thing with the offense, there's a couple issues. One, basketball offense is not like football offense. You're not calling a play every time down the floor. It's basically where do you stand when the ball comes across the line, and then where do you cut to start with. That's the first thing. It's more of like a set, and the Cavs are going to move really well in their sets because they've got really good players. The second thing that's really important to understand is that LeBron likes the sets. He likes the idea of offense that Coach Blatt brings, and if LeBron likes it, then the other guys are going to have to like it. Because that's how it's going to go. I mean, he's the boss on the floor, and I think it's up to him to produce that kind of continuity. But I think it will happen.
I think to some degree, Kyrie Irving is breathing a sigh of relief here because we're talking about somebody who came into the NBA as a teenager. He walked into Cleveland. LeBron-James had just left, so that was a lot of pressure on him to begin with. He was the first overall pick. More pressure. There was a debate between Kyrie Irving and Derek Williams. More pressure. He had no clue how to be a leader. He didn't. Everything was just handed to him, saying, hey, Kyrie, lead us in scoring. Be the leader on the court. Be the spokesperson for the team. Be the face of the franchise. At 19 years old, that's what was asked of him. That was on his plate. And to his credit, he's been a two-time All-Star in 3 years, but I think now he is feeling like, okay, finally, I've got somebody I can pass to, somebody I trust, somebody who can take pressure off of me. He's going to be seeing less and less of multiple and sometimes 3 defenders, and I think he's going to thrive.
Let's take a question right here in the back, sir.
I read in Sports Illustrated that Tim Duncan led the Spurs in minutes. He was way down in terms of minutes per game for the league. With the supporting cast that the Cavs have, like Sean Marion, and Tristan Thompson, and Mike Mitchell, will they be able, Mike Miller, will they be able to keep these players fairly rested during the year and keep them all under 35 minutes?
That's the beauty about Pop. Pop looks at the bigger picture, because you mentioned, you know, I think it was none of the starters played over 31 minutes a game.
Right, Duncan played 30.
30, okay. And so what Pop does, in order to be able to run your run your system and run your rotation like that, you have to trust your players. That means that in the course of the season, you'll see Pop resting Duncan, Tony Parker, just in odd games. And you're like, what is he doing that for? Well, part of it is to get rest, but second is you start building confidence for some of your rotation guys. And so what that does, that builds confidence, that builds chemistry and cohesion. So when the playoffs come, those guys are ready. I'm talking about those 8, 9, and 10, the 10-player guys. Those guys are ready because they've been through it already in the season. And so it takes trust throughout the course of the regular season in order to get to that point. And I don't know if David Blatt has that type of trust in this roster. I know they're talented, pretty talented 1 through 10, but you know, Pop is special. I don't know. You guys been around the league a long time. Have you guys seen anything more than what Pop does?
No, and also when you have some championship rings to show, you can do it.
You can do that, yeah.
Remember, because we're supposed to win 70 games. So, no, seriously, if you want to cut minutes, you can't win 70 games. I mean, it's sort of.
And Fedor wants him to win 70 games, so he can't cut minutes.
LeBron plays 46 minutes a game. Joe, get that, will you?
Yeah, I got it. I mean,
that's true.
I asked Coach Blatt the other day about LeBron's minutes. I mean, he's averaging 39 for his career. I think he was between 37 and 39 all 4 years with Miami. And David's reaction was, well, that's a lot, and especially early on. So I think, and he said something really cool, something like we've got to keep our minds about us or something like that with these minutes. So I think that's a really good question in the back, and I think that especially early on that they're going to do everything they can to play LeBron like 33, 34 minutes.
LeBron's been on 2 teams that have won 66 games, and he's never had a backup capable as Sean Marion is. And I think that's a huge key. Nobody's going to sit here and say that Sean Marion is LeBron. There's an enormous gap between the two guys.
Huge.
Enormous gap. But this is the best backup that's ever been behind LeBron. Sean Marion has never averaged less than double figures. He averaged 30 minutes a game last year in Dallas. Dallas, a team that took San Antonio to 7 games in the first round of the playoffs. Marion could start on a lot of teams in the NBA. And having that kind of guy backing up LeBron, I think, is going to allow David Blatt to limit the minutes of LeBron and have the Cavs still win a bunch of games that way.
Okay, yes, sir.
At least 3 of the panelists said Cavs will be in the championship round. It's going to go to 7 games. 2 of the guys said we'll lose in 7. 1 guy said we'll win in 7. In the NBA playoffs, the home team almost always wins the 7th game, if it is 7 games. So how is the 7th game decided? Is it based on 1 loss record during the year, or 1 year the West is home if it goes 7, the other year it's East? What's the mechanism on that?
Well, thank God it's not based on the winner of the All-Star. There's only one sport that's dumb enough to do that.
How do you determine
Record
that?
in the regular season.
The best record in the regular season gets home court throughout.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't say 7 games for what it was.
Yeah, I didn't say 7.
I think I said Spurs in 6, but
Sorry, I think you're going to have to check your sources.
3 games. There'll be a 3 games. Plus, my predictions are just.
This gentleman was next. We'll get to y'all, I promise.
I have a comment and a question. I've listened to First Take and Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith. And
Sorry about that.
Chicago and Cleveland being the 2 teams in the East, one of them is going to come out of it the winner. Here's the key for me, and I just wanted you to comment on this. I feel it's going to be like this. Whoever in April is the healthiest will be the team that will win from the East. Now, I know you said Derrick Rose is healthy right now, but remember now, this is his first season he's going to play a full season. And that's just like, we don't know what's going to happen. And I believe the Bulls, I might be wrong, would you consider them an older team than Cleveland, or about the same, or no? Because you look at Carlos Boozer, he's injured.
Well, Boozer's with the Lakers now.
Boozer's not there anymore.
Yeah. No, I don't think age is a factor at all. I think Gasol's the oldest guy on that roster, and he's still good. And you got Taj Gibson. You know, you got there's some young studs on that squad. But no, of course, injuries, and that's one thing we can't predict.
I know that.
Yeah, we just don't know, and there's no doubt about it. Whoever is healthy or the healthiest, say in April, definitely is going to have a fighting chance. That's just hard. You hate to try to predict the injury because you want to see everybody at full strength, go at it and let the best team win. So unfortunately for Derrick Rose, Chicago, they've just been going through it, and I just don't have the confidence in Rose to say that he's going to be able to, stay up healthy to give his team a chance.
But to your point, I think the reason why a lot of people are pointing to Chicago and Cleveland is because they are probably the 2 deepest teams in the Eastern Conference. If Rose goes down, they have Aaron Brooks, who they added. If Jimmy Butler goes down, they've got another guy who can step in. If Dunleavy goes down, they've got Doug McDermott, who they drafted in the first round. So both these teams have been built not just 1 to 5 or 1 to 7. It's kind of 1 to 9, and not a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference are like that.
When we're talking about injuries, one of my favorite players is the wild thing, Anderson Varejão. Has he done anything different this year that might make you think that he would be more durable this season, or is it still the same roll of the dice with that player?
I think it's always going to be a roll of the dice because of the way that he plays the game. And he can't play the game any different because that's what makes him extraordinary. The minute that Anderson Varejão stops diving for loose balls and saving passes and throwing his body around and matching up with some of these big centers in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, the minute he stops doing that is the minute that he becomes an ordinary player. And he can't stop doing those things. That's who he is.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. And then we're going to say yes, ma'am. Okay.
I was looking at some box scores old box scores from right around 1985, 1990. And I know
Terry and Bud, you got this one?
Who's on the beat there?
Ouch.
You be quiet.
He didn't say 1965.
And by the way, did you know James Naismith was going to make that basket about 5 feet tall so you could dunk on it?
Thank you.
And I said, no, they're going to be bigger than Mike one day, so we just put it a little high.
That's optimistic. Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
And I noticed that teams back then were averaging at least 10 assists more a game. Why is that?
Took a lot more shots, too. Generally, they just They just put up the ball. They just put up a lot more shots, a lot more points. They would argue now the defense is better. Well, part of the reason you get more assists is if you take more shots, which creates more field goals. I don't mean to be that. There are just more opportunities. And I think somewhat, too, is a lot of these coaches just like to call a lot of plays where there was a little more freelance. But it's one of the things you really have to look at. On your 7th game thing, it's 81% of the time, I think in the playoffs, the home team wins. I remember looking that up last year or 2 years ago.
The stuff that's just stuck in your head.
That's about it. I don't know where my car is.
I believe it's being stripped right now over on.
Yeah, probably is.
Yes, ma'am.
In listening to some of your comments, you mentioned the big three, you mentioned LeBron. My concern is that the theme of the team is all for one, and I don't see the media necessarily embracing that thought because it's usually LeBron's face on everything. And my thing is that I think it can change the culture, the thinking, the atmosphere of the team, perhaps if we focus more on the team. I don't even like the big three. I think that's been used before.
Well, LeBron knows that.
I understand LeBron.
No, he knows that.
He knows that, okay. But I'm just saying, I wonder if the media can you embrace the team concept. I remember just years back, it was always generally LeBron was the face of the team. And I just think if it's the team, as opposed to, rather than a big poster, the team poster. And just having a conversation and maybe using that language in headlines and coverage. What do you think about that? Am I just being overly optimistic?
I'm sorry, where's the full-time Matthew Dellavedova reporter?
Yeah, we're hiring.
I guess, okay. Go ahead, bud.
No, I mean, I think it's always been a star-driven league, and this just happens to be the greatest player on the planet. And then we introduced the whole other layer of him coming back to a place that he
also, as we see.
So I think that's probably just a natural thing that's going to happen for a while. But I do get you.
What do you think, too? I think as we see them play, you get more of a feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like who emerges and
I'm most interested tonight to see how they do share the ball. Not whether LeBron plays 40 minutes and scores 40 points. I mean, I think it goes a lot farther than that if they're going to win a title.
I'm amazed nobody's asked a question about Dion Waiters and how.
I mentioned that earlier.
It's a big four, Dion.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Well, along that.
Chris, what about Dion Waiters?
Well, I'll tell you what. Along those lines, let me ask that question.
No. You're Dion.
Let me ask that question, and that is in this way. You said that Dion would be the X factor on this team. I wanted to find out who the others thought would be X factors, but let's go with Dion. That's who you think is going to be the X factor. Why?
I think because Dion thinks he's just as good as LeBron, and that's good. That's a good thing. That's good because he was confident. But at the same time, reality has to hit you somewhere inside, and you're not that guy. Look at that paper right now. It's all about him. And so Dion has a unique skill set to where he can help this team. He can be that X factor. If he's taking the open shots, given what the defense is taking him, he's going to be fine. But if he goes outside the realm of the offensive concepts of the Cavs, man, he can put this team behind. And he's just that's the wild card for me. That's why I say he's the X factor, because he definitely can give them some extra games during the regular season, but he definitely can set them back a couple of games.
Mike, why don't you ask Joe who his X factor?
Joe, who's your X factor?
Well, I mean, I just think I think it's LeBron.
Go figure.
Because
you only cover one guy.
That's right. I didn't know there were four. I didn't know that there were four others out there. I mean, he's the X factor because we don't. Going in any year, you don't know how far the team's going to go, and it's up to him to take them wherever it is. And there are some roles that will be new for him. He has never been the top cop. He never has. He didn't have to do that in Miami. I mean, Dwayne Wade was every bit the enforcer that LeBron was. And Chris Bosh, is a different personality, but still, I mean, he had a presence there too. Now it's LeBron and then everybody else. That's the first thing. Second thing is LeBron has to decide how he wants to impact games. and how and the decision he makes, if that will work with, with Kevin Love and with Kyrie Irving. Now it's up to them to conform to the way he plays too, but that's on LeBron as well. And I mean, we all think he's going to do really well, but it's on him if he gets hurt, if he doesn't embrace the leadership role well, if the offense just for whatever reason doesn't click, and he's a part of that, then they're not going to make it.
All right, X Factor, Fedor.
I have Tristan Thompson actually, because I mentioned I think one of the places where the Cavs are thin is that front line, and he's going to have a huge role. Not only is he going to serve as the backup to Anderson Varejao, an injury-prone player, but Tristan now is stepping into a six-man role, and that's a new role for him. He hasn't come off the bench since his rookie season. You have to go back to March of 2012, the last time Tristan Thompson came off the bench in a regular season game. That's a new role for him, and we've talked about depth being very, very important in the NBA and depth being a key for the Cavs, and he's going to be asked to stabilize that second unit along with Shawn Marion.
Bud.
I would probably say Varejao. I don't think this is a very good defensive team at all, and I think he needs to stay healthy and be that kind of annoying defender. They just have Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving are going to be weak links there, and if somebody is going to make things difficult around the basket, I think it'd be Varejao.
Terry, you got an X Factor?
I'm with Chris Haynes on Dion.
Okay.
That's why I asked the question, because I hoped he would answer it better than I would. He did.
You got what now? You can do better too.
No, man, no, seriously, I agree. Because if you got one guy who just wants to jack up a bunch of shots, you got all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Who is, there you go. Yes, sir.
Okay, they're predicting that LeBron-James is going to be the MVP this year and take it away from Durant. But with all the people that he's got to back up, all these power shots that we have, do you think that he's going to get as many shots? And with Coach Black being the defense strategist, is he going to go more on the defense, keep the scores down lower, or are we going to see some blowouts?
I think LeBron early on, he would start to defer to guys and get guys used to the system because he can get his shot whenever. But I think throughout the course of the season, he's going to impose his will. He's going to be that guy. And Kevin Durant, if Kevin Durant was healthy, he would have been my pick to get the MVP again. But coming back from that, the injuries coming, I don't know how strong he's going to come back. I think everything, the stage. One thing about media, me too. I'm involved in it too. They love a great story, and I just think him coming back here just sets the stage for him to have a great season. And I think it's his to lose personally.
And Kevin Durant's foot fell off.
Yeah, that helps.
I didn't want to say that, but
well, it did. So that's throws a wrench into his MVP.
Anthony Davis looks good out there too.
How about the scoring though? Are we going to see blowouts or?
The Cap? Yeah. Well,
or is it going to be defense like Coach Brown?
Sir, how many questions do you think you're going to ask?
What did you say? Defense? You had a good adjective for what they're going to be defensively. Can you remember?
Terrible.
Yeah, it was one of those eyeballs at the IVL, and I think it's a real issue. Because the other thing, too, is when you're blessed to be able to score a lot, it's easy to figure we'll just go out there and put up 115 to 120 and we'll just outscore them. And what's your problem? We won by 10. You gave 109 points, but we won by 10. So, which in the regular season is not a huge problem, but can be in the playoffs. So that might be the interesting thing, too, to see how Vlad is playing we need to play better defense when we keep winning these games 119 to 108.
I think there's another side, though, to the defense, and I think it's something that LeBron James and Chris Bosh and some of those guys in Miami learned. When you don't have to be the sole focus offensively, when you don't have to exude so much energy on the offensive end, you start playing better defensively. I think part of the reason why Kyrie's been such a terrible defender throughout his career is because he was asked to do so much offensively. He had to use all of his energy just to keep the Cavs in games and get shots for himself and get shots for others. Now that you have such a good offensive team and a myriad of weapons, I think you have a chance to be better defensively just because of that. And it doesn't mean that they have great defenders on this team. It doesn't. but it means that they won't have to use as much energy offensively. You know, Washington last year gave up less than 100 points per game. They don't have a great defender. They don't. John Wall's not a great defender. Bradley Beal's not a great defender. The only guy that they really had is Trevor Ariza. That's it. But part of the reason why they were able to keep teams under 100 is because they had a lot of different weapons offensively, and they didn't have to use so much energy on that side of the floor.
All right, somebody who did not yet asked the question. You in the front had your hand up. We'll get you after that, okay? Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering how long you think the team's going to stay together with all of these short contracts these guys have.
That is the most Cleveland of questions. Haven't played the first game yet.
Have you had a chance to see the Nike commercial that came out today?
Yeah, I did.
You don't cut that if you're planning on going anywhere. I don't think it's in him. I think he wants to be here long term. I think he's tried to make that statement through the ads you've seen on television. And the contract, at least for him, it's a business thing. I mean, there's a new $24 billion deal that will take effect in the NBA with TV money in 2016, and the players get a bunch of that. So if he signs a long-term deal now, he's actually limiting his earning potential 2 years from now, and that's why he's done what he's done contract.
When this was all about Kevin Love.
Yeah.
I can't see Kevin Love at the end of this season looking around at the landscape of the NBA and saying, you know what? The Los Angeles Lakers look a little bit better than this Cleveland team with LeBron. Or, you know, boy, it's really enticing to go to Houston. Something like that. You've got to have a better option to go somewhere. And Kevin Love, after dealing with terrible teams in Minnesota for 6 years, I can't imagine him leaving LeBron James' team.
Yeah, the short contract, I think, was just a matter of what he saw in the dynamics of the league and how he wants to be the highest paid player, and he should be. You know, somebody close to him last July told me that he would have come back here. He didn't care who the owner was, and he didn't care who the head coach was. He was coming back here to play.
Yeah, his family really, when he that thing at Media Day where they said, well, what did your kids say when you asked about coming home? He says, well, I asked them, and he went through the whole litany. That means we get to live at our own house and our old friends and all that. He's just at a much different place in his life at this point, and I think it's sincere because, frankly, every word of that Sports Illustrated story so far is when he's been talking, he's pretty much, you know, lived it out. And I also thought the night when he was at Infocision Stadium, and he said something like, "I just don't want to go through all this again, the free agent thing." I know that feeling. Some of us know that feeling in our own life. We don't feel like moving again. We don't feel like switching again. And that doesn't mean he ends his career here or whatever, but two and gone. On the contract thing, because I talked to somebody that's real close there on that, was what teams were doing is they were using, LeBron James is not making the max. He's about $1 million under the max when they were negotiating with other players. So LeBron was determined this time to whatever the double, the most you could get. So, because remember, LeBron is very tight, and this goes into Joe's area with the agency and with Chris, so basically he's got his own sports agency right now. So he wants the gold standard contract.
Can I say one thing? The only caveat to what I just said about he didn't care who the owner was is that I know for a fact that when his people met with other teams during that period when he was being wooed, the question they asked was, is your owner willing to pay not just the luxury tax, but the repeat luxury tax offender, or whatever you call that. So, and Dan clearly was. So.
We've got about 5 minutes left for questions, and then stick around when it's done. We're going to finish our video cast, but we'll have some business to conduct here with the gifts that we want to give. And the gentleman wearing perhaps the best sweater I have seen in years. I see a lot of people in jerseys, but if you could just stand up and ask your question, sir. There it is, the old Cavs Mark Price logoed sweater.
So I'm wondering, there was a story out recently about how Kobe Bryant kind of maybe outstayed his welcome in the Lakers as far as how being effective in the later stage of his career. So LeBron, is going to be here. He's turning 30, and his prime is not going to last that much longer. Whereas Kyrie just signed a long-term contract. He is only going to get better, presumably, and he's looked really good, especially coming off the international games in the summer. So how do you guys see Kyrie Irving's role kind of evolving relative to what LeBron's role is in the team?
Okay, 2-minute warning. We need quick answers on this. We've got another question that I promised we'd take. Go right ahead. Chris Haynes.
Well, this is LeBron's team for the next 4 or 5 years. Kyrie Irving is going to have to learn how to win, how to develop into a leader, and those are the things that, he's going to learn, playing behind LeBron James. So, even though he's not going to be the focal point, the #1 option, he's still going to be a very valuable member to this team just by learning from LeBron. So when LeBron does head out or is not at his prime anymore, Kyrie Irving can step in because he'll be at his super prime, step in and be just a much more mature superstar.
The championships help in that case? I mean, winning helps?
Of course, that's the biggest skill. You do that, and then you start to grow and you learn on the fly, and that's what these guys want to do. They're going to learn. This is going to be a learning adjustment period here, but they're just so good that you can see them really being a championship contending team. So if they can win a championship and learn at the same time, hey, kill two birds with one stone.
Sir?
I realize the season hasn't started yet, but what do you think? The Cavs front office has obviously built up a bunch of trade assets. I don't know what they're doing half the time, but I think they have a pretty good sense for how they're moving money around and why they sign guys and then trade them. And they probably won't use them all this year. I know it's early to talk about, but what do you think that first trade ends up being? Because there obviously will probably be some piece moved around between now and then outside of a Ray Allen signing, hypothetically. But whether it's during the season or towards the end of the year, how do you see that kind of working out?
Okay, we do have 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes remaining. Go ahead.
Mr. Flute?
They have a $5.3 million, I think, trade exception, and they got that so that they could go get a big guy when he comes available. That's when they did the whole thing where Keith Bogans was a Cavalier for about as long as I was a Cavalier. So that was what that's about. And I know you guys know, they're looking for size, and they hope around midseason some team with a guy that's making what they think is too much money, then they could just do it and bring him in. But that was one of their big things for right now is this like you said, they do stuff that, there's 5 scientists in a room don't know exactly what they did.
It's really been a pleasure talking with you guys, and particularly meeting the new fellas, Joe Vard and Chris Haynes. Welcome to Cleveland and to covering the Cavs. And let's give them a warm round of applause for their efforts here. Thank you all very much for being here. And guys, great job. Bud Shaw, Terry Pluto, and who else did I? Oh, and Chris Fedor, of course, all of you. Terrific job. Hey, I tried earlier and it didn't seem to work in our program, but if you get your little red tickets out, I'm going to keep saying numbers until somebody takes this stuff off my hands.